All right, hello and welcome. Today, we're going to get our heads around a topic that can sometimes feel a bit, well, a bit tricky. We're talking about fractions. But I promise you, by the end of this, you'll see they're not so bad after all. So, let's jump right in. Let's be honest. Does the word fraction just make you kind of sigh or groan a little bit? If it does, you are definitely not alone. But here's the thing. They're literally everywhere in daily life, from splitting a pizza with your mates to checking out your favorite team's stats. So let's dive in and make them finally make sense. So what even is a fraction? Well, simply put, it's just a part of a whole thing. Imagine a multi-pack of 6 bags of crisps. If you get peckish and eat 2 of them, you've had 2 out of the total 6. That top number, we call it the numerator, that's how many parts you actually have. So that's 2. The bottom number, the denominator, that's just how many parts the whole thing was split into in the first place, which was 6. See? Simple as that. Okay, so theory is one thing, but let's see how this stuff actually works in the real world. This is where fractions become genuinely useful. Okay, so here's a classic problem you might see. Let's say your favorite football team had an amazing season and scored 60 goals in total, and your star striker, what a legend, scored 2/5 of them. The big question is, how many goals is that exactly? So how do we work this out? Well, there's a golden rule, and it is super simple to remember. You just divide by the bottom number, and then you times by the top number. So first step, we take the total goals, 60, and we divide by the bottom number, which is 5. That gives us 12. Step 2, you just multiply that answer, 12 by the top number, 2. And boom, there's our answer, 24 goals. Our star striker scored 24 of the team's 60 goals. Not a bad season at all for them. See how that one simple rule makes it totally straightforward? Right. Now this is where things get a little bit sneaky. Fractions can be absolute masters of disguise. They can look completely different from each other, but actually mean the exact same thing. Let's unmask them. These are what we call equivalent fractions. The easiest way to think about it is with a pizza. Right? Imagine you eat half of a pizza. That's the same amount as eating 2/4 of it, right? And it's also the same as eating 4/8. You're still eating the exact same amount of pizza. They're all just different ways of writing down this same value. So because fractions can be written in so many different ways, we often want to find the simplest, most cleaned up version. We call this simplifying. So let's take a clunky-looking fraction like 12/18. To make it tidier, you find the biggest number that divides perfectly into both the top and the bottom. In this case, that number is 6. You divide both by 6, and you get the much neater, simpler fraction, 2/3. Fractions that are bigger than one whole also have a couple of main disguises. On the left, you've got a mixed number. That's a whole number hanging out with a fraction, like 3 3/4. On the right, you have what's called an improper fraction. Some people call them top-heavy fractions, where the top number is bigger than the bottom, like 15/4. The key thing is, they both represent the exact same amount, they're just written differently. So how do you actually switch from a mixed number to an improper one? Let's use the example on the slide, 5 3/4. Step 1, multiply the big whole number by the bottom number of the fraction. So 5 times 4 is 20. Step 2, add that result to the top number. So 20 plus 3 is 23. And for the final step, you just write that new number, 23, over the original denominator. So 5 3/4 becomes 23/4. Easy. And what about going the other way? Well, it's just as simple. To convert a top-heavy fraction like 22/3, you just divide the top by the bottom. So how many times does 3 go into 22? It goes in 7 times with a remainder of 1. The main answer, 7, becomes your new big whole number. And the remainder, which was 1, becomes the new top number of your fraction. So 22/3 is exactly the same as 7 1/3. Okay, so we've met the different types of fractions and their disguises. Now it's time for the main event, actually putting them to work with adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Let's do it. Okay, listen up, because this is the number one, most important, absolutely crucial rule for adding and subtracting fractions. The bottom numbers, the denominators, they have to be the same before you do anything else. You just can't add thirds and fifths together directly. It's like trying to add apples and oranges. You have to find a common unit first. So let's take this problem, 2/3 plus 1/5. As you can see, the pieces are completely different sizes, right? Thirds and fifths. So we can't just add them up as they are. So what's the solution?
The trick is we find a common denominator. We need a number that both 3 and 5 can divide into. The easiest one to find is usually just to multiply them together, which gives us 15. So as you can see in the table, to turn 2/3 into 15ths, we have to multiply both the top and the bottom by 5. That gives us 10 15ths. Then for 1/5, we multiply the top and bottom by 3 to get 3 15ths.
And now that the denominators are the same, the hard part is totally over. It's easy. You just add the top numbers together. 10 plus 3 gives you 13. And, this is super important, the denominator stays the same. It stays as 15. So our answer is 13 15ths. And this works exactly the same way for subtracting. You just subtract the top numbers instead.
Okay, after all that faff with common denominators, you are gonna love this. Multiplying fractions is wonderfully, beautifully simple. Seriously, you just multiply the two top numbers together, and then you multiply the two bottom numbers together. That is it. So for this example, 3 times 2 is 6, and 5 times 11 is 55. The answer is 6 55ths. Done.
And finally, we have division. This one has a fantastic little trick that makes it just as easy as multiplication. All you have to do is remember this one little phrase, this golden rule you see right here. Flip the second one and multiply. Let's see that in action with 1/3 divided by 4/5. Step 1, you take the second fraction, the 4/5, and you just flip it upside down, so it becomes 5/4. Step 2, you change that division sign into a multiplication sign. And step 3, you just multiply straight across like we did before. So 1 times 5 is 5, and 3 times 4 is 12. Our final answer is 5/12. It's the piece of cake once you know the trick. And believe it or not, that's it. Those are the core skills you need to handle pretty much any fraction problem that comes your way. Let's do a super quick recap of your new fraction toolkit. So let's just quickly run through your new fraction toolkit one last time. Remember, fractions are just parts of a whole. To find a fraction of an amount, you divide by the bottom and times by the top. For adding or subtracting, the golden rule is you must find a common denominator. For multiplying, it's easy. You just multiply straight across. And for dividing, you flip that second fraction and then multiply. That's basically your cheat sheet for fractions. So there you have it. Fractions completely demystified. They aren't so scary once you know the rules of the game, are they? So now that you're armed with all this knowledge, what are you going to use it for first? Maybe splitting a bill with friends, or adjusting a recipe, or maybe just feeling a whole lot more confident in your next math class. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.